I want to stop here because I've said that like 5 times to stop and I just can't stop myself. We can talk about tomato sauce. I had a whole conversation before about tomato sauce. I plant 112 plants from scratch every year. We do 200 quarts of homemade tomato sauce, make our own pasta, lasagna, all that stuff, pizza. The pizza was really wonderful. Okay. Jersey guy eating pizza in California. Come on, give me a break. No, it was very good. It was great. But what I'd like to do is just take a minute and kind of canvas things that you see and hear, because in the end, I'd say at its core, the United States is in a lot better shape than I think sometimes when you turn on TV. You see some knucklehead like me on TV, change the channel, because most of the time they try to scare you to make you watch and then sell you an advertisement in between on the commercials. That's a joke, knucklehead like me on TV. Okay, we're gonna skip that one. We'll just move on to the next one. But all kidding aside, I think the U.S. economy is in much better shape than given credit. Aside from our debt, yeah, you've always got politics, you've got geopolitics, you've got 2 wars going on right now. What did the S&P finish today? Highest ever. Where did the NASDAQ finish today? Highest ever. Where'd small caps finish today? Highest ever. Oh yeah, there's a war in Iran and there's a war in Ukraine and Russia. Don't let geopolitics impact your decision. It's about fundamental economics. And oftentimes, your own personal sphere will tell you a heck of a lot about what's happening in most of the country if you're honest with yourself. Yeah, prices have been higher. We can have that discussion just for fun, and then maybe I'll shut up. What's the #1 thing that's increased since 2019? No. Gas was about the same. What's the one thing in your life that's increased more than anything else since 2019? Food in the top 20, food is only number 12. Now, in fairness, if you took a basket of food in 2019 for $100 and you bought that same basket today, it's $156 average nationwide. So yeah, it's up about 50%. What's the one thing that's up almost 70%? Thank you, car insurance. What the hell does car insurance have to do with a pandemic? Never let a crisis go to waste. I could show you the list and you'd be shocked at how many of them are not pandemic related. That's just the way it works. You have no choice. Let me stop and answer some questions. I'd much prefer. Yes, ma'am. And your name, I'm sorry. Irene Phil. Nice to meet you.
My pleasure. How do you think the real estate market's going to shift in the Central Valley as far as buying or selling houses?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm going to take it nationwide and maybe I can shift it to here. Question on houses and how it might change in the Central Valley, but I'll start with nationwide. So there's this weird thing that's happened back to demographics. What happened with boomers is we expected by this point 75 to 90% of boomers, depending on the location that they lived in, to have sold their home and moved to a smaller home or assisted living facility. Of that number, how many have actually done that? How many boomers have relocated to something smaller or gone to assisted living? If you had to guess. What'd you say? 15. Almost there, 10%. We expected 90, 10% have moved. Why? Well, because George Vitas made you a lot of money. You all want to live your lives in your house. You grew up there. Your grandkids are coming to visit you. Why would you leave? You get at-home care. You can afford it. So what happened was when 2008 happened, back-to-bank regulations, lending got real tight. Builders didn't want to build anymore. They didn't want to take the risk. So now you have older folks who are supposed to bring supply into the market, and they don't. So now what has to happen? Well, unfortunately, say this carefully, some of the boomers are not going to be here over the next 15 years. And as the boomers are not here, what happens to their home? By 5 years from now, the price of homes will flatten and then begin to correct. Look at Phoenix, Arizona, Tucson, Arizona, Denver markets as exemplary markets that we're already seeing a course correct because they have older populations there, that as boomers age out and their homes come into the market, now we see pressure in multifamily where most of the younger kids are living because they're going to leave the multifamily and they're going to go to a used home. That will be a linchpin. And if I'm right, that AI and technology and demographics are deflationary. Over time, remember, we grew up with really 4% inflation, if you think about it. Today we're at 3, it's not terrible. But we didn't have nearly the technology today that we did back when I was a kid. Think about AI. So then your TV on the wall that went from $3,000 to $300 at Costco. So as that impact has its effect over the next 2 years, inflation should settle in 2.5%. That means mortgage rates come down to 5.5%. And then you'll see buyers come in. Prices will be wompy depending on the market that you're in, how many older folks, how many younger folks, what demand is. but the housing market will really begin to correct in 5 years. Fun for fun, what's the average age of a new home buyer in the United States right now? You're close, 48 years old. Exactly. Think of that. And in fact, to make it worse, we have an affordability crisis for millennials. The average price of a home in the United States right now, used home, is what? Someone said, yeah, 430 grand. Divided by that 70 grand, that spread is the third worst in American history. The Great Depression was the worst. And then in the 80s, one other time. Very good question. Fascinating topic. We could take this in a lot of directions. Why houses matter, new home construction? They make the country grow, and we're not building enough. If we get bank regulations to change, there's a chance, but you really need rates to fall. 2 years from now, this process begins. I'll bet you $1 in 5 years, housing prices will correct, depending on market, 10 to 15%. Question, anybody? We'd love some questions. Or I can let you all go do something more fun. Yes, sir.
When the war hopefully does end in Ukraine, what do you think is going to happen after that?
Oh,
Do you have any ideas?
yeah. It's a good question. So the question was, in the war in Ukraine, not Iran, right? Ukraine? Ukraine. The war in Ukraine, when it does eventually end, what happens? Believe it or not, Iran is much easier to answer than Ukraine. So right now, the analysts that we work with on the Ukrainian front, what's happening is, more than likely, they're going to give up 3 provinces. They'll give up 3 provinces to end the war. That's the scenario right now. Now, they're not happy about it, but if you notice just today, actually it happened over the weekend, it was announced today, Germany and Ukraine teamed up to build advanced drone technology. Germany will make the parts, Ukraine will give them the software. So what Ukraine is actually becoming is a war machine for themselves and for Europe. Why that's relevant, if you remember before this, Ukraine was broke. Ukraine was a farming community. So by them now being forced into weapons manufacturing at a time when Europe is desperate for weapons, and they get a lot from us and a lot from themselves, but not enough, I think the scenario will be that it looks like somewhere between the next 6 to 8 months, they'll end up giving up 2 to 3 provinces. As you see the war right now, notice that the fighting is very different. It's only real skirmishes here and there. It's kind of already gotten there, leaving well enough alone. Ukraine's building up its supplies to defend itself. And the real problem is Russia's running out of money. Now, for all the talk about Russia, it's a tiny country. Size-wise, it's huge. But its economy, it's not even bigger. It's about the size of New Jersey. It's not a big country. But you know the average age of death of men in Russia is? 54 years old. What's the #1 problem with Russian men? Alcoholism. So it's not exactly a country. I mean, they have a nuclear threat, obviously. But I think ultimately Ukraine will outlast them. Question, any other question? Anybody? Anything at all?
Let's talk about Iran.
Iran, sure. There was 3 scenarios that we have, and the third one has kind of a 3+. The first one, the United States blinks and backs off, and as of now, that doesn't seem to be the case with the blockade. The second one, Iran blinks, and they go through real regime change, and that doesn't seem to be the case either. And the fourth one is where you end up in this stalemate, and one of 3 things happen. Civil war, we get legitimate civil war, and that seems to be happening in certain skirmishes right now. To get a regime change that's like Venezuela, not pro-West, but more pro-people. So that's probably the most likely scenario. And then the other one would be a complete military coup. And that doesn't seem to be the case right now. The most likely scenario is the second one, where you get a regime change with more of a moderate. And then we get back to some sort of normalcy. Europe has committed to stepping in and actually monitoring the Strait post our exit. So there's a strategy here. That's why we're at all-time highs. Ultimately, when you think about oil in and of itself, oil's relevant, much more relevant to Europe, Asia than this is to us. Just to take this thread and show you how politics and economics don't mix. How many barrels of oil does Iran produce per day? About 3 million a day. By blocking that blockade, so economics can be a stranglehold, it costs them $500 million a day. Between 300 to 500, depending how many tankers go out. So if 3 million barrels come off of the global supply, where can you find 3 million barrels? Besides here. Venezuela. They were making 900, now they make 3 billion. So let's have a little fun with this conversation. What kind of oil do we get out of the ground in the United States? We get crude, but what type? Light, sweet crude. Why is that easy? It's got the best viscosity and the least sulfur amount. What's it mean? Easy to distill. The most the most sought after crude in the world. Can we refine that here in the United States? Nope. Because in 1970, the last time we built a refinery, where did we get our oil from? The Middle East. Then we had an oil embargo. Then where did we get it from? Some of our own. South America. Where do we send the light sweet to get refined through? Mexico. Where does the heavy crude from Venezuela go? Because Venezuela gets what out of the ground? Very heavy, dirty crude. What's the one country on the planet that's really good at refining that? The United States. So, some of this stuff does connect. There is that. What does Cuba use to power its electricity? Believe it or not. Not oil, well, a byproduct. Diesel fuel. Where do they buy their diesel fuel from? Venezuela. Why is Cuba suddenly very nice to President Trump? Because he controls their diesel fuel. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Some of it is political. But in the underlying tone, my point is, you think about the economics of it, it's much more matterful to the rest of the world than it is to us because of our ability to produce power today. And that part's pretty cool. Yes, ma'am.
Since nobody else asked any questions, I'll just monopolize you. What's your take on the push for universal health care in the United States? I'm familiar with it in Canada.
Yeah, the push for universal health care in the United States. I don't know that's an answerable question. Because at the end of the day, your Medicare Medicaid system today is your second biggest line item on the government budget. Right now, it's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, interest payments, and then defense. So, when you think about it, we're at a place where I don't know if there's an easy answer except for one that's going to kind of change the narrative. Actually, I think your future in healthcare has nothing to do with universal healthcare or where we are today. It's got everything to do with technology. For example, there's a company in Rochester, New York, that could take a sample of your blood and in a matter of a day, tell you what cancer you're likely to get, what you should do now to it, what stage you would have it in when they would find it, and how you can prevent it by just taking a sample of your blood. So that technology, coupled with everything you're going to do on your phone, with the advent of AI when it's for healthcare and it's already well in advance. I'll give you a fun AI story. And again, they're not perfect. There's a story about a guy who had pains in his lower back into his legs since he was a teenager. He was in his 40s at that point and basically handicapped, couldn't barely walk. He had gone through back surgeries. They tried a number of different things, never found a solution. He goes on to the paid version of ChatGPT, puts in all his symptoms, and it gave him a scenario where there could have been nerves fused on the lowest part of his spine from at his birth that may be causing it. So he brings this scenario to his doctor. The doctor says, that might be a plausible scenario. They never looked at it. They did an MRI. They went and operated. The guy's fine. So what happens when that's commonplace? So I think your future of healthcare spending will be modular. You'll decide, do you want to deal with an AI bot or a real doctor? So less about universal healthcare, but I think you'll have access to healthcare significantly cheaper because of technology. That to me is the path. Whether we solve universal or with the system we have today, the system we have today doesn't work, but universal doesn't work either. Going back to Sicily, my cousins, why do they pay 75% of their income tax? My cousin is a family of 4. They pay $3,000 a month into the federal system for healthcare. Yes, they can go in any hospital they want, but he pays it in his monthly stipend. So it all depends on how you look at it. Man, did you have a question? Anybody else? Yes, sir. Oh, I got one more.
Future of business in California with California being California.
That's a really easy question. The future of business in California with California being California. Today, NVIDIA is the 4th largest country in the world when you look at how much money they make versus the rest of the world. What state do they rival every single day to battle it out who's going to be 4? California. You are the 4th largest economy in the world, followed by Texas. So in that sense, I don't think you need to worry about the future of business in California. Yes, you can get into the politics of it, and maybe your current governor might be a little wonky, and who knows, you're going to get 2 Republican guys out there, who knows. But at the end of the day, you guys have a business engine that is, one of the best in the world. Think about the diversity of this. This economy is emblematic of the whole country, from agricultural to industry to oil and everything in between. I would argue, as a capitalist, people ask me all the time, what am I, left, right? I'm none of those. I'm a capitalist. I'm born that way from my father and mother. I would argue your tax structure, I think, is becoming prohibitive to your growth. So you think about where the migration of people are going, whether it's Idaho, Nevada, Texas, just like New York, New Jersey, you're going to South Carolina and Florida, the tax structure is prohibitive to people of wealth and of new industry. That could be your problem. It's not your today issue, but you're certainly on that path. And that's not personal, that's just economic. Why don't I stop there? Oh, wait, I see him. All right, well, can I go one more bus? Or what? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a podcast, website?
One of those things, yeah. The girl, Madison, where's my buddy Matt? Madison will send you. It's called Weekly Market Impact with Phil Blancato. They'll send it to you. 20, 30 minutes long. I talk more about tomatoes and my kids than I do economics, but it's fun to listen to. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Well, since agriculture is so important, I always read time to time that China owns so much of the farms, Japan and all that stuff is going. How is that is that affecting us?
Really good question. So what happens if other countries, China, Japan, own our land? Go for it. I think it's great. It drives up prices, for them if they're going to spend money on it. How many remember what happened when Japan owned Rockefeller Center? How many know that Japan owned Rockefeller Center? In 1985, Japan owned all the buildings around Rockefeller Center and even the ice skating rink. Does Japan own Rockefeller Center today? Nope. They went bankrupt. Japan is bankrupt. So the physical property itself is still the soil we live on. If some other foreign ownership wants to own it, that's great. Where the revenue goes is somewhat irrelevant, as far as because you're going to pay taxes here anyway. So I don't know if the ownership of the land's irrelevant. What we've seen though is foreign ownership, and there's so many examples of this, have ebbed and flowed based on the state structure of taxes and regulation. So why I think that bill is so powerful, AstraZeneca is now incentivized to build that plant here in the United States. And I can go on the list. There's Taiwan Semiconductor. God forbid, China takes over Taiwan. If this was 5 years ago, we'd be in a lot of trouble because we wouldn't get chips. Arizona and Texas now have plants that are rivaling the chips made in Taiwan. It's owned by Taiwan Semi. It's owned by Samsung. Great, go for it. That's the beauty of American capitalism. And if they can succeed at it, they're going to pay taxes locally, hire people locally. They may own the land, but that's okay. The same way Japan didn't manage it very well, they lost it. For fun, where does Nissan make more cars today? The United States or Japan? US. Everybody, it's been an honor and pleasure being in front of you. I hope it was helpful. Thank you very much, everyone.